I stand alone in my beautiful new living room, surrounded by untouched appetizers and decorations, staring at my phone screen showing my mother's Facebook post, "So proud of our boy's first home," posted with a photo of a house that isn't mine. 10 years of overtime shifts, skipped vacations, and ramen dinners led to this moment. 43 family members received invitations a month ago. 0 showed up. The champagne sits warm, the cake untouched, and I realize something is terribly, impossibly wrong with my family. My hands trembled as I scrolled through Facebook trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The post had been shared 37 times already. Comments poured in from relatives I hadn't heard from in months, all congratulating someone who definitely wasn't me. I called my sister Hannah first, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Hey, just wondering where everyone was today." "Today?" Hannah sounded genuinely confused. "Wait, I thought Jake was having his housewarming this weekend." My stomach dropped. Jake. My 25-year-old cousin who still lived paycheck to paycheck and had never owned anything more valuable than his PlayStation. "What are you talking about?" "The house thing. Mom shared something about Jake buying a place. Didn't you see it?" I pulled up Jake's profile with shaking fingers. There it was, post after post about his new journey into home ownership. The comments section was flooded with family members offering congratulations advice about mortgage payments and promises to visit soon. Not a single mention of my actual housewarming invitation. "Hannah, I sent you an invitation 3 weeks ago for today, for my house." Silence stretched between us. "Michelle, I honestly don't remember getting anything like that. Are you sure you sent it?" I screenshot my sent messages, my carefully crafted invitation with the date, time, and address clearly listed. Hannah had read it, the blue check marks proved it, but somehow Jake's vague posts about moving up in the world had completely overshadowed my actual achievement. I started making more calls. Aunt Brenda answered on the 4th ring, her voice distracted. "Oh, honey, I'm so busy preparing for Jake's celebration next weekend. You know how proud we all are of him finally getting his life together. Such a responsible young man, unlike some people in this family who just spend money they don't have." The barb hit its mark. Unlike some people. She meant me. The family had always treated my careful saving and financial planning as somehow irresponsible, as if working 3 jobs to afford my dream was showing off. Uncle Robert was even worse. "Jake's really stepped up, Michelle. Maybe you could learn something from him about making smart choices instead of always trying to prove something." I ended the call and sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by catered food that would spoil before morning. My beautiful marble countertops reflected the overhead lights casting shadows across surfaces I'd dreamed about for a decade. Every penny I'd saved, every sacrifice I'd made, every weekend I'd worked while others played, had led to this moment of complete invisibility. My phone buzzed with another notification. Jake had posted again. This time it was a photo of a completely different house. A rental property downtown with a for lease sign barely cropped out of the frame. The caption read, "Grateful for this new chapter. Hard work pays off." The comments flooded in immediately. Our grandmother Ruth wrote, "So proud of our Jake. This is what happens when you apply yourself." Cousin David added, "Way to go, man. Your parents must be over the moon." I scrolled through Jake's recent posts with growing disbelief. 3 weeks ago, he'd shared a photo outside a luxury car dealership with the caption, "Decisions, decisions." Everyone assumed he was car shopping. 2 weeks ago, he'd posted a picture of a real estate magazine with research mode as the caption. Last week, he'd shared a photo of himself signing papers at what looked like a bank, but the image was cropped so tightly that you couldn't see what he was actually signing. Jake had orchestrated this entire deception without telling a single direct lie. He'd let our family draw their own conclusions while I'd been honest and straightforward about my achievement, and somehow honesty had made me invisible. I found my invitation buried in my mother's Facebook photos from a month ago. It had received exactly 0 likes and no comments posted the same day Jake had shared his real estate magazine photo. The algorithm had clearly favored his content over mine, and my family had followed suit. My phone rang. My mother's contact photo smiled back at me, the same picture from last Christmas, where she'd insisted Jake stand in the center of every family photo while I was relegated to the edges. "Michelle, honey, I saw you called Hannah. Is everything okay?" "Mom, did you get my housewarming invitation?" A pause. "Of course I did, sweetie. It's just that Jake's been going through such a hard time lately, and when he announced his good news, we all wanted to focus on supporting him. You understand?" I understood perfectly. Jake's fictional success mattered more than my real achievement because Jake was the family member who needed propping up while I was expected to handle disappointment gracefully. "I worked 10 years for this house, Mom. 10 years of 60-hour weeks and sleeping on an air mattress to save money. And we're proud of you, honey. It's just that timing is everything, and Jake really needed this boost right now." I walked to my front window and looked out at the driveway where 40 cars should have been parked. Instead, I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, walking her dog, probably wondering why the woman who'd been so excited about her housewarming was standing alone in a house full of untouched food. "Where exactly did Jake buy a house, Mom?" Another pause. "Well, I think it's in the downtown area. He's been very private about the details." I pulled up the photo Jake had posted. The house number was partially visible, 427 Oak Street. A quick Google search revealed it was a rental property managed by Downtown Apartments, LLC. Monthly rent $2,400. Jake worked part-time at a sporting goods store. The math didn't add up, but apparently math didn't matter when it came to family pride. I drove to Oak Street knowing I shouldn't, but unable to stop myself. The house Jake had photographed was beautiful, with a red brick facade and professional landscaping. A young couple was loading boxes into a moving truck outside. I parked across the street and watched them for 20 minutes, realizing they were the actual new tenants. Jake's truck was nowhere to be seen, but I drove to his apartment complex anyway. The same beat-up Chevy he'd been driving for 5 years sat in his usual parking spot. But something was different. The bed of the truck was loaded with furniture I'd never seen before. Expensive-looking furniture that definitely hadn't come from thrift stores or yard sales. As I sat watching Jake emerge from his apartment building, struggling to carry what looked like a brand-new dining room set. Behind him, a delivery truck was unloading more boxes. Electronics, appliances, furniture that cost more than Jake made in 6 months. I got out of my car and walked toward him, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jake saw me coming and froze, a guilty expression flashing across his face before he recovered and forced a smile. "Michelle, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question. Nice furniture, Jake. Very expensive looking." He glanced back at the delivery truck, then at me. "Yeah, I've been saving up. You know how it is." "Actually, I do know how it is. I know exactly how much you make at the sporting goods store, and I know exactly how much that furniture costs. So why don't you tell me what's really going on here?" Jake's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're implying, but I don't appreciate the tone." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot of his house post. "This isn't your house, Jake. I looked it up. It's a rental, and it's not even your rental." For a moment, his mask slipped completely. I saw panic flash in his eyes before he recovered. "Look, Michelle, I never said I bought that specific house. People just assumed. People assumed because you wanted them to. Just like they assumed about the car dealership photo and the real estate magazine and the bank paperwork." Jake looked around nervously, probably hoping none of his neighbors were witnessing this confrontation. "You don't understand what it's like being the family disappointment. You've always had everything together. Some of us need a little help with our image." "Help with your image, Jake? I invited 43 people to celebrate the biggest achievement of my life, and not one person showed up because they all think you bought a house. Do you have any idea how that feels?" "It's not my fault people got confused." "You posted a photo of someone else's house and let our entire family congratulate you for my accomplishment." Jake's expression hardened. Your accomplishment, Michelle, you've been rubbing your success in everyone's face for years. College graduation, job promotions, now this house. Some of us don't need constant validation. I've been working my ass off while you've been playing video games and calling in sick to work. You don't know anything about my life. I gestured toward the expensive furniture. Apparently not, because last time I checked, you couldn't afford a $200 car payment, let alone thousands of dollars worth of furniture. Jake slammed the tailgate of his truck shut. You know what, Michelle? This conversation is over. If you have a problem with how our family sees me, that's your issue to deal with. He started walking back toward his apartment, but something made me follow him. As he opened his truck's cab to grab something, a notebook fell to the ground. I reached for it automatically and Jake lunged to stop me, but I was faster. The notebook was filled with handwriting I recognized as Jake's, page after page of plans, timelines, and what looked like financial documents. My name appeared throughout the pages, my address, my job title, my salary information. And at the very top of the first page, in Jake's messy handwriting, Operation New Start, Phase 1 the house. My blood ran cold as I flipped through the pages. This wasn't just about letting people think he'd bought a house. Jake had been planning something much bigger, much more deliberate, and somehow it all centered around me. I clutched Jake's notebook against my chest, my hands shaking as I read his handwritten plans. Each page revealed a more disturbing level of calculation than the last. Give me that back! Jake's voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. Not until you explain what Operation New Start means. Jake glanced around the parking lot again, then gestured toward his apartment. Fine, come inside, but this stays between us. I followed him up 2 flights of stairs to his cramped 1-bedroom apartment. The place smelled like stale pizza and energy drinks. Dirty dishes filled the sink and clothes were scattered across every surface. This was not the home of someone who had suddenly come into money. Jake closed the door behind us and turned to face me. Look, Michelle, it's not what you think. I opened the notebook and read aloud from the first page. Phase 1, establish homeowner credibility through social media presence. Phase 2, leverage family support for financial backing. Phase 3, execute transition plan. I looked up at him. Execute transition plan for what, Jake? He ran his hands through his greasy hair. It's complicated. Try me. Jake sat down heavily on his stained couch. Do you have any idea what it's like being the family screw-up? Everyone always talks about how proud they are of you, how responsible you are, how you have your life together. I'm 25 years old and I still can't afford to move out of this dump. So you decided to pretend to buy a house? I didn't decide anything. It just happened. I posted that picture outside the real estate office, and Uncle Robert commented about how good it was to see me taking adult steps. Then Grandma Ruth shared it with this long caption about being proud of me. It felt so good, Michelle. For once in my life, people were proud of me. I flipped to another page in the notebook. This says, you've been doing this for 2 years. You have a timeline here going back to my college graduation. Jake's face flushed red. That's different. How is it different? Because you never needed the validation. You graduated magna cum laude. You had job offers before you even finished school. You didn't need everyone fawning all over you. So you stole it? I didn't steal anything. I just didn't correct people when they made assumptions. I found the page about my college graduation and read his notes. He had documented every Facebook post, every family gathering, every conversation where he had allowed people to believe he was also graduating with honors. While I had been working 3 jobs to pay for school, Jake had been crafting a parallel narrative where he was equally successful. Jake, you told Aunt Brenda you got accepted to graduate school. You never even finished your associate's degree. She assumed because we're the same age. You have a whole section here about my job promotion last year. You let everyone think you got promoted too. Jake stood up and started pacing. You don't get it. You've never been the disappointment. You've never had to watch everyone else succeed while you can't even keep a part-time job. Sometimes I need people to see me as something other than a failure. I kept reading my anger building with each page. You have my salary information here, my credit score, my mortgage details. How did you get this? For the first time, Jake looked genuinely scared. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been stalking my financial information for months. I just needed to know how much house I should claim to afford. I didn't want to make it unrealistic. You accessed my personal financial information to make your lies more believable. Jake stopped pacing. Your mom gave me some of it. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? She showed me your mortgage paperwork when she was bragging about your house. Said I should try to be more like you. I just took pictures of the documents. My mother had given Jake my private financial information. The woman who had raised me, who was supposed to protect my privacy and celebrate my achievements, had handed over my personal documents to help my cousin fabricate his own success story. I flipped to the back of the notebook and found pages of what looked like official documents, bank letterhead, mortgage applications, loan approvals, all with Jake's name but my information. Jake, these look like real documents. They are real documents. You applied for a mortgage using my information? Not exactly. Jake sat back down, his leg bouncing nervously. I applied using my name, but with your job and income information. Your mom said it would be okay as long as I didn't actually go through with it. My mom said it would be okay for you to commit fraud. It's not fraud if I don't actually get the money. I stared at him in disbelief. Jake, applying for loans with false information is fraud whether you get approved or not. But I needed the documents to show people. How else was I supposed to prove I could afford a house? I found another section labeled Furniture and Lifestyle Upgrade Plan. Jake had calculated exactly how much he needed to spend to maintain his successful image. $22,000 for furniture, electronics, and a car down payment. The notebook included detailed budgets and timelines. Where did you get $22,000, Jake? That's where it gets a little complicated. More complicated than identity theft and mortgage fraud. Jake looked at the floor. Your parents helped me out. Helped you out how? They co-signed for some loans, used their house as collateral. They wanted to help me get back on my feet. I felt the room spinning around me. They co-signed loans for you to buy fake furniture to support your fake success story. It's not fake if I'm really trying to turn my life around. Jake, you're living a complete lie funded by my parents' mortgage. Your parents wanted to help. They said you didn't need their support because you were already successful. I realized what was happening. My parents had been financing Jake's deception while I had worked myself to exhaustion to afford my own life. They had co-signed loans for him to buy the trappings of success while I had eaten ramen noodles and worked overtime to save every penny. Show me the loan documents. Michelle, I don't think that's a good idea. Show me the documents or I'm calling the police. Jake reluctantly pulled out a folder from under his couch cushions. Inside were loan agreements, all co-signed by my parents. A car loan for $18,000. A personal loan for $15,000. A credit card with a $20,000 limit. Jake, this is over $50,000 in debt. But it's helping me build credit. It's helping you build a fraudulent lifestyle while my parents risk their home. I found the final section of Jake's notebook. Future planning phase. This section outlined Jake's long-term goals, including something that made my blood run cold. Property acquisition through family transfer. I read aloud, Jake, what is property acquisition through family transfer? It's just an idea. An idea for what? Your parents are getting older. They might need help managing their finances. And if I'm seen as the successful family member, they might want me to help handle things like property transfers. Property transfers like what? Jake wouldn't meet my eyes. Like maybe helping them figure out what to do with extra properties. You mean my house? I mean helping the family make smart financial decisions. I realized Jake's plan was even more sinister than I had imagined. He wasn't just stealing credit for my achievements, he was positioning himself to steal my actual assets. You're planning to steal my house. I'm not planning to steal anything. I'm planning to be seen as the responsible family member who can help make important decisions. By lying about everything you've ever accomplished. By being the person the family needs me to be. I closed the notebook and stood up. Jake, this is insane. You're committing fraud, my parents are risking their home, and you're planning to steal my house. Do you understand how serious this is? You're being dramatic. I'm being realistic. You've created fake documents, taken out fraudulent loans, and stolen my identity to fund a completely fictional life. Jake's expression turned ugly. You know what your problem is, Michelle? You can't stand that people might be proud of someone other than you. You're so used to being the golden child that you can't handle sharing the spotlight. Sharing the spotlight? Jake, you stole my spotlight. On the day I was supposed to celebrate the biggest achievement of my life, I sat alone in my house because my entire family was congratulating you for my accomplishment. And how does that feel? Jake's voice was full of venom now. How does it feel to be ignored and forgotten? Because that's how I've felt every day of my life, watching you succeed at everything. So you decided to destroy my life to make yourself feel better. I decided to give myself the life I deserved. I headed toward the door. This conversation is over. Where are you going? To my parents' house, to show them what their golden boy has really been doing. Jake jumped up and blocked my path. You can't tell them about this. Watch me. Michelle, if you tell them, it'll destroy our family. You already destroyed our family when you chose fraud over honesty. They'll lose their house if these loans get called in. Is that what you want? I stared at him, realizing he was threatening my parents' financial security to protect his lies. You're threatening them. I'm explaining consequences. Your parents believed in me when no one else would. If you destroy that, you'll be destroying them too. You destroyed them when you convinced them to co-sign fraudulent loans. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. If you say anything about this to anyone, I'll tell the family you're having a mental breakdown. I'll say you're jealous and unstable and making up stories to hurt me. Who do you think they'll believe, the successful family member who just bought a house or the angry sister who's clearly having problems? I realized Jake had thought this through completely. He had positioned himself as the victim and me as the unstable aggressor. If I accused him of fraud, it would look like jealousy and spite. But as I looked around his filthy apartment at the expensive furniture that didn't match anything else he owned, at the fake documents scattered across his coffee table, I realized Jake had made one critical error. He had left evidence of everything. I drove to my parents' house with Jake's notebook on the passenger seat, my mind racing through everything I had discovered. The evidence was overwhelming, but I knew Jake was right about one thing: he had positioned himself as the family success story, while I had been cast as the overly serious, competitive daughter who couldn't be happy for others. My parents lived in the same 3-bedroom ranch house where I had grown up, located in a neighborhood that had seen better days. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed the lawn needed mowing, and the mailbox was leaning at an odd angle. Small signs of financial stress that I should have noticed earlier. I found my mother, Linda, in the kitchen, scrolling through Facebook on her tablet. She looked up when I entered, and I could see Jake's house photo reflected in her reading glasses. Michelle, honey, I saw the sweetest comments on Jake's post. Everyone is so proud of him finally getting his life together. I set the notebook on the kitchen table. Mom, we need to talk about Jake's house. Isn't it wonderful your father and I are so relieved that he's finally found his direction? Mom, Jake didn't buy a house. Linda looked confused. What do you mean he posted pictures? I opened the notebook to the first page and showed her Jake's handwritten plans. He's been lying to everyone. This is his notebook. He calls it Operation New Start. My mother picked up the notebook and squinted at Jake's handwriting. As she read, her expression shifted from confusion to something I couldn't quite identify. Not surprise, not outrage. Something closer to annoyance. Where did you get this? It fell out of Jake's truck when I confronted him about posting pictures of someone else's house. You confronted him? Linda's voice carried a tone I recognized from my teenage years when I had gotten in trouble for questioning authority. Mom, he's been letting everyone think he bought a house when he actually lives in the same apartment he's had for 3 years. He used someone else's property photos and let the family draw their own conclusions. Linda continued reading through the notebook, her frown deepening, but she wasn't frowning at Jake's deception. She was frowning at me for discovering it. Michelle, this is really none of your business. None of my business, Mom. I invited 43 family members to my housewarming party. Nobody came because they all think Jake bought a house. How is that none of my business? You're being very selfish right now. The words hit me like a slap. I'm being selfish! Jake has been struggling for years. If he's finally found some confidence and motivation, why would you want to tear him down? I stared at my mother in disbelief. Because he's committing fraud, Mom. Look at these loan documents. I flipped to the pages showing the mortgage applications Jake had filled out using my personal information. Linda glanced at them briefly, then closed the notebook. Your father will want to see this. She called toward the garage. Gary, can you come in here for a minute? My father appeared in the doorway, wiping motor oil from his hands with a dirty rag. Gary had always been the practical parent, the one who handled finances and made logical decisions. I felt a surge of relief. Dad would understand the seriousness of what Jake had done. What's going on? Gary asked. Michelle found some papers that belonged to Jake. She's upset about his house. What kind of papers? I opened the notebook and showed my father the mortgage fraud documentation. Dad, Jake has been applying for loans using my personal information. He's created fake documents and he's been lying to the family about buying a house. My father studied the pages carefully, his expression serious. This was the response I had expected from my mother. Gary understood money, understood consequences, understood the legal implications of fraud. But when he looked up, his face wasn't angry or concerned. He looked tired. Michelle, sit down. Dad, do you understand what these documents mean? I understand exactly what they mean. Your mother and I have known about Jake's situation for months. Known about his situation, Dad, he's committing identity theft. He's trying to get his life together. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. You've known he was using my information. My mother and father exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. Michelle! Linda said Jake needed help building credit so he could qualify for loans. We thought if he used your employment history as a reference, it would give him a better chance. As a reference, Mom, he put my salary on his loan applications. Only because his real salary wouldn't qualify him for anything. That's fraud. Gary sat down across from me. It's helping family. It's a federal crime. It's giving Jake a chance to succeed instead of watching him fail at everything like he has for the past 25 years. I looked back and forth between my parents, trying to process what I was hearing. You helped him create fake loan documents. We helped him present his best-case scenario, Linda said. If Jake had your job and your income, he would qualify for these loans. We're just helping him access the credit he deserves. But he doesn't have my job or my income. Not yet, Gary said, but with the right support he could. I realized my parents weren't just enabling Jake's deception. They were active participants in it. Dad, did you help him create these fake bank statements? I work at First National. I know how loan applications work. I helped Jake put together a package that would get him approved. Using my personal information. Using information that shows what Jake is capable of achieving. Information that belongs to me. Linda leaned forward. Michelle, you have to understand Jake's perspective. You've always been the smart one, the responsible one, the one who succeeds at everything. Jake has never had that kind of confidence. So you decided to give him mine. We decided to help him build his own. I found the loan agreements my parents had co-signed, and these you risked your house to fund Jake's fake lifestyle. Gary's jaw tightened. We invested in Jake's future. Dad, you co-signed $53,000 in loans for someone who makes minimum wage at a sporting goods store. We co-signed loans for our nephew who is finally taking responsibility for his life. By lying about everything, by taking the steps necessary to build a better future. My mother pulled out her phone and opened Facebook. Look at these comments on Jake's post. Look how proud everyone is. Look how supportive the family is being. When was the last time you saw everyone this united about celebrating someone's success? I looked at the screen. Dozens of comments from relatives offering congratulations, advice, and support. Offers to help Jake move recommendations for contractors' invitations to family dinners to celebrate his achievement. The engagement was higher than any post I had ever received for my real accomplishments. Mom, they're celebrating a lie. They're celebrating Jake finally becoming the man we always knew he could be. But he's not becoming anything. He's living in the same apartment, working the same job, and now he's buried in debt. Gary stood up. The debt is an investment in his future. The debt is destroying your financial security. Our financial security was never your concern before. The accusation stung because it was partially true. I had been so focused on my own financial independence that I hadn't paid attention to my parents' situation. But that didn't excuse what they had done. Dad, if these loans default, you'll lose your house. If we don't help Jake now, we'll lose our son. Jake isn't your son, he's your nephew. Linda's voice went cold. He's family, something you seem to have forgotten. I haven't forgotten anything. I've been working myself to death for 10 years while Jake played video games. I saved every penny to buy my house, while he spent his paychecks on entertainment, and when I finally achieved my dream, you helped him steal the credit. We helped him find his confidence. You helped him commit fraud. Gary pulled out a chair and sat back down. Michelle, let me explain something to you about family loyalty. I braced myself for what was coming. Jake has been struggling his entire adult life. He's been depressed, unmotivated, and directionless. When he came to us asking for help, we saw an opportunity to give him the boost he needed. By breaking the law. By believing in him when no one else would. I would have believed in him if he had earned it honestly. Jake doesn't have your advantages. What advantages? I worked 3 jobs to get through college. I lived on ramen noodles and slept on an air mattress for years to save money. What advantages did I have that Jake didn't? Linda and Gary exchanged another look. You're naturally responsible, Linda said. Jake needs more support. So you gave him my support. We gave him what he needed to succeed. I opened the notebook to the section about future property transfers, and this planning to help Jake manage family properties. Gary read the section carefully. This is smart financial planning. This is planning to steal my house. This is planning for a future where Jake is in a position to help make family decisions. Based on lies, based on potential. My father pulled out a manila folder from a kitchen drawer. Inside were more documents. Legal papers I recognized as power of attorney forms, property transfer documents, and what looked like a will. Dad, what are these? Contingency planning. If something happens to your mother and me, we want to make sure our assets are managed by someone responsible. I looked through the papers. Jake's name appeared throughout the documents as the designated financial manager and heir to my parents' estate. You're leaving everything to Jake? We're leaving everything to the family member who has shown the most growth and responsibility. The family member who has committed fraud and identity theft. The family member who has finally stepped up and taken control of his life. I realized this went far deeper than I had imagined. My parents weren't just enabling Jake's deception, they were rewarding it with their entire estate. What about me? You don't need our help. You have your own house, your own career, your own life. I have those things because I worked for them. And Jake is working for his. Jake is stealing for his. Gary's voice rose for the first time. Jake is doing what he has to do to succeed in a world that has never given him a fair chance. The world gave him exactly the same chance it gave me. He chose not to take it. He chose differently than you chose. That doesn't make him less deserving of family support. I stood up, clutching Jake's notebook. This isn't family support. This is financial fraud enabled by my own parents. This is love, Linda said quietly. Something you might understand if you ever thought about anyone other than yourself. The accusation hung in the air between us. According to my parents, my years of hard work and financial responsibility were somehow selfish, while Jake's fraud and deception were expressions of family love. I need to see something, I said. I opened my mother's Facebook account on her tablet and navigated to her messages. What I found confirmed my worst fears, a group chat titled Family Updates that included 27 family members, everyone except me. The chat history went back 3 years. Messages about my college graduation, my job promotion, my house purchase, all accompanied by eye-rolling emojis and comments about my need for attention. Meanwhile, Jake's fictional achievements were celebrated with heart emojis and congratulations. You excluded me from the family group chat. We thought you might be more comfortable focusing on your own life. You thought I might interfere with your plans to help Jake steal my identity. We thought you might not understand the bigger picture. I scrolled through months of messages coordinating Jake's deception. Family members sharing advice about how to support his new direction. Plans to avoid my real celebrations in favor of Jake's fictional ones. Detailed discussions about my personal life and finances shared without my knowledge or consent. At the bottom of the chat history, I found the most damning evidence yet. A message from my mother posted just 3 hours ago. Jake's housewarming celebration next weekend. Everyone mark your calendars. So proud of our boy's first home. My parents were planning a celebration for Jake's fake house purchase, using my house photos on my property without my knowledge. I stared at my mother's phone, scrolling through the family group chat with growing horror. The conversation about Jake's celebration was still active, with family members commenting in real time about their excitement to finally visit his beautiful new home. Mom, you're planning Jake's housewarming party at my house. Linda reached for her phone, but I held it away from her. Michelle, you're taking this out of context. I'm taking this exactly in context. You're using my actual address for Jake's fake celebration. I kept reading the messages. Uncle Robert had offered to bring his barbecue grill. Aunt Brenda was coordinating side dishes. Grandma Ruth was planning to bring her famous apple pie. The same relatives who had ignored my actual housewarming were eagerly planning to attend Jake's fictional one. Look at this, I said, finding a message thread from 2 weeks ago. Cousin David wrote, so glad Jake is finally showing some responsibility instead of just partying all the time like some people in our family. Gary shifted uncomfortably. David didn't mean anything personal. David was talking about me. And look at this response from Aunt Brenda. Michelle has always been too focused on material things. It's nice to see Jake valuing family over possessions. I found more messages criticizing my life choices while praising Jake's fictional responsibility. The family chat was filled with comparisons between Jake's supposed maturity and my alleged selfishness. They think I'm materialistic and selfish because I worked hard to buy a house. They think you could be more supportive of family members who are struggling, Linda said. More supportive, I've been supporting myself since I was 18, while Jake has been living off family handouts for 7 years. I scrolled further and found messages about my actual invitation. Several family members had received it, but the chat showed them discussing whether to attend. Uncle Robert had written, Michelle's always throwing these elaborate parties to show off. Maybe we should skip this one and focus on supporting Jake instead. Cousin Emma had responded, I feel bad for Michelle, but Jake really needs our encouragement right now. Aunt Brenda had added, Michelle will be fine. She's strong enough to handle disappointment. Jake might give up on his progress if we don't show support. My entire family had received my invitation and actively chosen to boycott my celebration in favor of supporting Jake's lie. You all decided together to skip my housewarming. We decided together to prioritize Jake's emotional needs, Gary said, by ignoring my emotional needs completely. Your emotional needs have always been secondary to your practical achievements. What does that even mean? Linda took her phone back. It means you've never needed the kind of support Jake needs. You succeed at everything you try. Jake fails at everything he tries. Sometimes the struggling family member deserves more attention. I felt something breaking inside me. So, you decided to give him my achievements? We decided to help him find his own achievements. By stealing mine, by supporting his efforts to improve his life. I opened Jake's notebook to a page I hadn't fully examined before. It contained detailed financial information about every family member. Income estimates, debt levels, mortgage payments, even credit scores. He has financial profiles on everyone in the family. Gary looked at the page. That's just research. Research for what? For understanding how to help everyone make better financial decisions. I found a section titled Family Investment Opportunities. Jake had identified family members who might be willing to invest in his fake success story. He had calculated exactly how much money he could borrow from each relative based on their financial situations. Dad, he's been targeting family members for money. He's been identifying family members who might be willing to help him succeed. By lying to them about his success, by showing them his potential for growth. I discovered that Jake had borrowed money from 6 different relatives over the past 4 months, small amounts that wouldn't trigger suspicion. $500 from Uncle Robert for moving expenses, $800 from Cousin David for house repairs, $1,200 from Grandma Ruth for furniture. He's been running a con game on our entire family. He's been accepting help from people who love him, people who love the fake version of him. Linda's voice turned sharp. The version of him that we're trying to help him become? I found the most disturbing section yet. Future revenue streams. Jake had calculated potential income from managing family properties, investment accounts, and financial decisions. He was planning to position himself as the family financial advisor based on his fake success. He wants to manage everyone's money. He wants to help everyone make smart financial decisions. Based on fraud, based on newfound responsibility. Gary pulled out another folder. Michelle, let me show you something that might help you understand our perspective. The folder contained bank statements and financial documents for my parents. As I read through them, my heart sank. They were in serious financial trouble. Credit card debt, late mortgage payments, and a home equity loan that had ballooned beyond their ability to repay. Dad, you're facing foreclosure. We're facing a temporary financial setback. Your mortgage is 3 months behind. Our mortgage will be current once Jake's situation stabilizes. Jake's situation isn't going to stabilize. He's living on borrowed money and stolen credit. Jake's situation is going to improve because he finally has family support and confidence. I realized the full scope of the disaster. My parents had risked their home to fund Jake's fake lifestyle, believing that his fictional success would somehow become real success. How much money have you given Jake? We've invested in Jake's future. How much? Gary looked at Linda before answering. $68,000 in direct loans and co-signed debt. $68,000 you don't have. $68,000 we're investing in family. Dad, you're going to lose your house. We're going to lose our house if Jake doesn't succeed. Jake can't succeed because his entire life is built on lies. Jake will succeed because he finally has the support system he needs. I opened my mother's Facebook account again and found the private messages between her and Jake. The conversations revealed a level of coordination that shocked me. Jake had been sending my mother regular updates on his progress, screenshots of fake bank balances, photos of apartment hunting websites, updates on his job interviews, and financial planning. My mother had been coaching him on what information to share and when to share it. Mom, you've been helping Jake plan his deception for months. I've been helping Jake build confidence and family support. By helping him lie to everyone, by helping him present his best self to people who care about him, I found messages where my mother had shared my personal information with Jake. Photos of my mortgage documents, screenshots of my social media posts, updates on my work schedule and social activities. You've been spying on me for Jake. I've been sharing family news with family members. You've been sharing my private information without my permission. I've been helping Jake understand what success looks like so he can work toward it himself. The messages revealed that my mother had been Jake's primary co-conspirator from the beginning. She had provided him with my personal information, coached him on maintaining his lies, and helped him coordinate the family's response to his fake achievements. Mom, this makes you an accessory to fraud. This makes me a supportive family member. This makes you a criminal. Gary stood up. Michelle, that's enough. Your mother has been trying to save this family from watching Jake self-destruct. She's been helping Jake destroy everyone else instead. She's been providing the kind of unconditional family support that you've never needed. I've never needed it because I've been honest about my life. You've never needed it because everything has always come easily to you. I stared at my parents, realizing that in their minds, my decade of hard work and sacrifice had been effortless, while Jake's years of lies and manipulation represented admirable effort. I need to see something else, I said. I opened the family group chat again and found a conversation that had taken place during my actual housewarming party. While I had been sitting alone in my empty house, my family had been actively celebrating their decision to boycott my event. Uncle Robert had written, "Glad we all decided to give Michelle some space today. Sometimes people need to learn that family support isn't automatic." Cousin David had responded, "She'll be fine. Michelle always bounces back, but Jake might not recover if we don't focus on him right now." Grandma Ruth had added, "I'm proud of our family for supporting Jake when he needs us most. That's what real family loyalty looks like." My family hadn't just accidentally overlooked my celebration. They had deliberately sabotaged it while congratulating themselves for their loyalty to Jake. But the final message in the thread made me realize the situation was even worse than I had imagined. My father had written, "Phase 1 complete. Jake's social media presence is established and family support is confirmed, ready to move to Phase 2 next weekend." My parents weren't just enabling Jake's deception, they were actively planning its escalation. The words Phase 2 echoed in my mind as I stared at my father's message. I grabbed Jake's notebook and flipped to the section labeled Future Planning Phase, reading more carefully this time. "Dad, what is Phase 2? Gary and Linda exchanged the same guilty look I had been seeing all afternoon. "Michelle, some things are private family business." "This is my family too, and Jake has been using my identity. Nothing about this is private anymore." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, something I should have done hours ago. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 unauthorized credit checks in the past month. A new credit card application flagged for review. A mortgage refinancing inquiry that I had never initiated. Someone has been accessing my credit reports. "Michelle, you're being paranoid," Linda said. I called my bank, immediately putting the phone on speaker. The customer service representative confirmed my worst fears. Multiple loan applications had been submitted using my social security number and employment information, all from Jake's IP address. "Ma'am, we flagged these applications as potentially fraudulent because the addresses didn't match your account information." "What addresses?" "The applications listed your employment and income information, but used different residential addresses. Our fraud detection system caught the discrepancies." I looked at my parents. Jake has been using my identity to apply for loans all over town. Gary stood up abruptly. "I need to make a phone call." "Dad, who are you calling?" "I need to call Jake." "To warn him that I found out?" "To let him know there might be some complications with a timeline." I realized my father was part of an active conspiracy to defraud lenders using my identity. Dad, hang up the phone. "Michelle, you don't understand the bigger picture." "The bigger picture is that you're all committing federal crimes." I grabbed the phone from my father and ended his call to Jake. Then I opened his contact list. Jake's number was listed under business partner, Business partner. Linda sighed. Michelle, your father and Jake have been working together on some financial projects. What kind of financial projects? Gary sat back down heavily. Real estate investments. Using my identity, using your credentials as a reference point. I pulled up Jake's recent loan applications on my banking app. He had applied for a construction loan, a business loan, and something called an investment property mortgage, all using my employment information but with different addresses throughout the city. He's been trying to buy multiple properties. He's been trying to build a real estate portfolio. With stolen credentials, with family support and guidance. My father opened his laptop and showed me a spreadsheet that made everything clear. Jake hadn't just been pretending to buy one house. He had been working with my parents to create an entire fake real estate empire. Dad, this shows 5 different properties. This shows 5 different investment opportunities. The spreadsheet contained detailed financial projections for a property management business. Jake was listed as the owner and operator. My parents were listed as financial advisors, and my name was listed as the silent partner, providing credentials and credit support. You put me down as a business partner without telling me. We put you down as a family member who might benefit from Jake's success. I'm listed as personally guaranteeing $1.2 million in property loans. You're listed as someone with the credit score and income to support Jake's business goals. I realized the full scope of the fraud. Jake wasn't just stealing credit for buying a house. He was using my identity to build a real estate empire with my parents as willing accomplices. Where did you think Jake was going to get the money to pay these loans? From rental income on the properties. Dad, Jake doesn't own any properties. Not yet, but with the right financing, he could own several properties and generate enough rental income to cover all the loans. With financing based on my stolen identity, with financing based on your excellent credit and stable income. My mother pulled out her own laptop and showed me rental property listings Jake had been researching. All of them were priced well beyond anything Jake could afford, but the rental income projections looked promising. Mom, these are fantasies. Jake can't afford any of these properties, and using my credit to help him apply for loans is fraud. It's creative financing. It's identity theft. It's family members helping each other succeed. I found another folder in Jake's notebook labeled Timeline and Milestones. The plan was much more detailed than I had imagined. Jake had been working with my parents for 8 months to establish his fake credentials, build family support, and prepare for a massive property acquisition scheme. Phase 1 was establishing social credibility. I read aloud. Phase 2 is property acquisition. Phase 3 is business establishment. Phase 4 is family financial integration. That sounds like a reasonable business plan, Gary said. It sounds like an organized crime operation. I flipped to the Phase 4 details. Jake's final goal was to be appointed as the family financial manager, handling investment decisions and property management for multiple family members. He had already identified relatives who owned property or had significant savings accounts. He's planning to take over everyone's finances. He's planning to help everyone make better financial decisions. Based on a completely fraudulent foundation, my phone rang. Jake's name appeared on the screen. My parents both tensed. Answer it, Gary said, but don't say anything that might cause problems. Problems? Dad, Jake has committed enough fraud to face 20 years in federal prison. Jake has made some mistakes while trying to improve his life. I answered the phone on speaker. Hello, Jake. Michelle, your dad called me. He said you might be having some concerns about our business arrangement. Our business arrangement, Jake, there is no business arrangement. You've been stealing my identity. I've been using family resources to build family wealth. You've been committing fraud. I've been creating opportunities for all of us to succeed together. Jake's voice was different now, confident, calculating. The bumbling, insecure cousin I had confronted earlier was gone, replaced by someone who sounded like he was running a sophisticated operation. Jake, I want you to stop using my personal information immediately. Michelle, I understand you're upset, but you need to think about the bigger picture. If this business succeeds, everyone benefits. If it fails because you withdraw your support, everyone loses. Everyone loses anyway when you get arrested for fraud. Nobody gets arrested if everyone cooperates. The threat was clear. Jake was telling me that my parents' financial security depended on my silence about his crimes. Jake, I'm going to hang up now and call the FBI. Before you do that, let me ask you a question. Did you know your parents used their house as collateral for my business loans? My heart sank. What? Gary nodded grimly. We put the house up as security for Jake's property investments. If my loans get called in, Jake continued, your parents lose their home within 30 days. And did you know? Jake added that several family members have invested their savings in our real estate venture. Uncle Robert used his retirement fund. Cousin David borrowed against his car. Grandma Ruth took out a reverse mortgage to invest in the project. I felt the room spinning around me. You've been taking money from everyone. I've been accepting investments from family members who believe in our success. Success built on lies. Success built on family cooperation and creative financing. Jake's voice turned cold. Michelle, you have a choice. You can support our family business and everyone succeeds together. Or you can destroy it and watch your parents lose their home, your uncle lose his retirement, and your grandmother lose the house she's lived in for 40 years. I realized Jake had constructed a perfect trap. If I exposed his fraud, I would destroy the financial security of every family member who had trusted him. If I stayed silent, I would become an accessory to an ongoing criminal enterprise. Think about it carefully, Jake said. I'll call you tomorrow for your decision. He hung up, leaving me alone with my parents and the devastating realization that my entire family's financial future was now tied to Jake's criminal operation. Gary looked at me with pleading eyes. Michelle, Jake is right about one thing. If this business fails, we all lose everything. Dad, this business is based on fraud. It was always going to fail. Not if you help us make it legitimate. There's no way to make identity theft and mortgage fraud legitimate. Linda reached across the table and took my hand. Honey, I know this is a lot to process, but Jake really is trying to build something positive for the family. By destroying my credit and stealing my identity, by using your success as a foundation for everyone else's success. I pulled my hand away. Mom, that's not how business works. You can't build real success on fake credentials. But we could build real success if you agreed to be Jake's actual business partner. I stared at my parents, realizing they weren't asking me to forgive Jake's fraud. They were asking me to join it. You want me to actually go into business with Jake? We want you to help Jake turn his fake success into real success. By legitimizing his stolen identity operation, by using your real credentials to support what Jake has already established. I understood the trap completely now. Jake had stolen my identity and used it to create financial obligations I never agreed to. Now my family was asking me to honor those obligations to protect everyone else's investments. If I refused, my parents would lose their home. If I agreed, I would become personally responsible for over $1 million in loans Jake had obtained through fraud. Either way, my life was about to be destroyed by the lies my family had chosen to support over my truth. I sat in my car outside my parents' house for 20 minutes, my mind racing through everything I had learned. Jake had built a criminal enterprise using my identity. My parents had enabled him with their life savings, and multiple family members had invested money they couldn't afford to lose. If I exposed the truth, I would destroy the financial security of people I loved. If I stayed silent, I would become complicit in an ongoing fraud that would eventually collapse anyway. But as I drove home, a different kind of clarity began to emerge. Jake had made one critical error in his planning. He had assumed that because I was honest and hardworking, I was also naive and passive. He had built his entire operation on the belief that I would either fail to discover it or fail to fight back effectively. Jake was wrong on both counts. I spent the next 3 hours researching federal fraud laws. identity theft penalties, and victim protection programs. Then I called a lawyer who specialized in white-collar crime and family financial abuse. Attorney Sarah Chen met me at her office that evening. After reviewing Jake's notebook and the financial documents my parents had shown me, she confirmed what I suspected. "This is a sophisticated identity theft and mortgage fraud operation," Sarah said. "The penalties are severe, but there are also strong protections for victims who cooperate with law enforcement." "What about my family members who invested money?" "Victims of fraud schemes can often recover their losses through restitution orders and asset forfeiture programs, but only if they're classified as victims rather than co-conspirators. My parents helped plan the operation. That makes their situation more complicated. But if they cooperate fully with the investigation, prosecutors might be willing to treat them as victims who were manipulated by Jake, rather than willing participants." Sarah explained the process. "If I filed a formal complaint with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, agents would investigate the full scope of Jake's operation. Any family members who had been deceived would be protected. Any family members who had knowingly participated would face consequences proportional to their involvement." "The key," Sarah said, "is to act quickly before Jake can destroy evidence or flee with the money he's already obtained." That night, I developed my strategy. Jake had used the family's social media obsession and financial desperation against them. I would use those same weaknesses against him. I started by creating anonymous social media accounts and joining local real estate investment groups online. Over the next 48 hours, I carefully planted information designed to flush out the full scope of Jake's operation. I posted in a landlord forum about a young investor who had been bragging about acquiring multiple properties with unusual financing arrangements. I shared enough details about Jake's story to make him identifiable without mentioning his name directly. Within hours, 3 different landlords responded with concerns about a Jake Morrison who had applied to lease properties while claiming to own other properties that didn't match his financial background. I posted in a mortgage broker group about seeing loan applications with inconsistent information describing the pattern of fake documents Jake had been using. 2 mortgage brokers contacted me privately with examples of similar applications they had flagged as potentially fraudulent. Most importantly, I reached out to other victims. Using public records, I identified people who had been targeted by similar schemes and connected them with resources to report their experiences. By Thursday morning, I had documented 12 other potential victims of Jake's operation and connected them with FBI resources. The federal investigation that Sarah had initiated was now supported by multiple victim reports and evidence of a pattern of criminal behavior. But I wasn't done with my counterattack. Jake had planned his fake housewarming celebration for Saturday afternoon at my actual house. He had invited 43 family members, the same people who had boycotted my real celebration. According to the family group chat, everyone was excited to finally visit Jake's beautiful new home and celebrate his success. I coordinated with Agent Williams from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit to use Jake's party as an opportunity to execute search warrants and make arrests. The timing would be perfect. Jake would be surrounded by evidence of his fraud in my house that he was claiming to own, with witnesses who could testify about his deceptive statements. But I wanted to do more than just see Jake arrested. I wanted my family to understand exactly how they had been manipulated and used. I spent Friday preparing a presentation that documented every aspect of Jake's operation. Screenshots of his planning documents, copies of the fraudulent loan applications, evidence of the money he had taken from family members, and proof of the fake social media posts that had started everything. I also prepared individual packets for each family member showing exactly how Jake had targeted and deceived them. Uncle Robert would learn that his $500 moving expense loan had actually funded Jake's fake furniture purchases. Cousin David would discover that his $800 house repair contribution had been used to pay for professional photography of properties Jake didn't own. Grandma Ruth would see that her $1,200 furniture investment had gone toward maintaining Jake's false lifestyle while he planned to steal her house through financial manipulation. Saturday morning, I positioned security cameras around my property to record everything that would happen at Jake's fake celebration. Then I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks away to watch the events unfold through my phone. At exactly 2 o'clock, cars began arriving at my house. I watched through the security cameras as my relatives parked in my driveway, walked across my lawn, and knocked on my front door carrying gifts and food for Jake's celebration. Jake's truck pulled up 10 minutes later. Through the camera, I could see him frantically talking on his phone, probably trying to figure out why nobody was answering the door at his house. At 2:15, 3 unmarked FBI vehicles arrived. Agent Williams and her team were dressed as party guests carrying wrapped packages that actually contained recording equipment and legal documents. I watched Jake approach Agent Williams and introduce himself as the homeowner. The conversation was brief. Agent Williams showed her badge informed Jake that he was under investigation for federal fraud charges and asked him to accompany her to the field office for questioning. That's when everything unraveled exactly as I had planned. Jake panicked and tried to run, confirming his guilt in front of 43 family witnesses. Agent Williams detained him while other agents began interviewing the party guests about their relationships with Jake and any financial transactions they had conducted with him. Within an hour, my parents, Uncle Robert, Cousin David, and Grandma Ruth were also being questioned about their roles in Jake's operation. The agents were professional and respectful, but they made it clear that everyone who had provided money or assistance to Jake's scheme was now part of a federal investigation. I drove back to my house at 4 o'clock, arriving as the FBI was loading boxes of evidence from Jake's truck and my parents' car. Jake was already gone, taken to the federal building for processing. My family members stood in small groups on my lawn, looking confused and frightened. Nobody knew exactly what was happening, but everyone understood that their celebration had become a crime scene. Agent Williams approached me as I got out of my car. "Ms. Morrison, thank you for your cooperation. We've recovered substantial evidence and identified multiple victims. Mr. Morrison is being charged with identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud. What about my family members? Those who were deceived will be treated as victims. Those who knowingly participated will face charges proportional to their involvement." I looked across my lawn at my relatives. Most of them appeared to be victims who had genuinely believed Jake's lies and lost money to his deception. But my parents and Uncle Robert were clearly in a different category. They had actively participated in planning and funding Jake's operation. As the FBI vehicles drove away, my family members began approaching me with questions I had been waiting years to answer. "Michelle," Aunt Brenda said, "what just happened? Why were the FBI agents at Jake's housewarming party?" "Because this isn't Jake's house," I replied. "This is my house, the house I invited you to celebrate 4 months ago. The invitation you all ignored so you could support Jake's lie." The recognition spread across their faces as they realized where they were standing. They were on my property celebrating my achievement while Jake was being arrested for stealing credit for my success. "Jake never bought a house," I continued. "He's been living in the same apartment for 3 years while using my identity to apply for fraudulent loans. Everything you've been celebrating was a lie." Uncle Robert stepped forward. "Michelle, we didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You were so eager to celebrate Jake's fake success that you ignored my real success." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots I had taken from the family group chat. Their own words, their own decision to boycott my celebration, their own criticism of my achievements while they praised Jake's lies. "You all chose to support a fraud instead of supporting your family member who had actually worked hard and succeeded honestly." Grandma Ruth looked around at my house, my landscaping, my driveway where her car was parked. "This is really your house." This is the house I saved for 10 years to buy, the house I invited you to celebrate, the house you ignored so you could attend a party for someone else's imaginary house. The shame on their faces was exactly what I had been waiting to see for months. But I wasn't done. 6 months later, I stood in the same living room where this nightmare had begun, but everything was different now. The space was filled with people who actually cared about my achievements, colleagues from work, friends from my volunteer organizations, neighbors who had watched me transform the property with my own labor and savings. These were people who celebrated real success built on genuine effort. Jake had pled guilty to 14 federal charges, including identity theft, wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and conspiracy. His sentence was 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation and full restitution to all victims. The judge had been particularly harsh because of the family manipulation aspect, calling it a betrayal of the most fundamental bonds of trust. My parents faced different consequences because they had cooperated fully with the investigation and provided evidence that helped prosecutors understand the full scope of Jake's operation. They were sentenced to community service and financial counseling rather than prison time. They lost their house anyway, unable to afford the payments without the fraudulent income from Jake's schemes, but they avoided criminal records that would have made their future even more difficult. The other family members who had invested money in Jake's fake real estate venture were classified as victims. Through the federal restitution program and asset forfeiture proceedings, they recovered most of their losses. Uncle Robert got back his retirement fund, Cousin David was compensated for his car loan, and Grandma Ruth's reverse mortgage was restructured to protect her home. But the most important changes weren't legal or financial, they were personal. My family had been forced to confront the reality of their choices. During the FBI investigation, every family member had to provide statements about their relationship with Jake, their knowledge of his activities, and their treatment of my genuine achievements. Reading their own words back to them in depositions had been a sobering experience for all of them. Aunt Brenda was the first to reach out 3 months after Jake's arrest. She apologized for the comments in the family group chat and asked if we could talk. During our conversation, she admitted that she had been jealous of my independence and financial security, and supporting Jake's fictional success had made her feel better about her own struggles. I realize now that I was rooting against your success because it made my own life look unsuccessful by comparison, she said. That was wrong and I'm sorry. One by one, other family members reached out with similar apologies. They had learned during the investigation that their support for Jake had actually enabled his victimization of vulnerable family members, including themselves. Uncle Robert was the most remorseful. I convinced myself that Jake needed our help more than you did, but really I just resented that you made success look so easy. I never saw all the sacrifice and hard work you put in. Even Grandma Ruth acknowledged her mistakes. I thought I was being a good grandmother by supporting Jake when he was struggling, but I was actually being a bad grandmother by ignoring your achievements. You deserved my pride and celebration, not my criticism. My parents' transformation was the most significant. Losing their house and facing federal charges had forced them to examine their role in creating the family dynamic that had enabled Jake's crimes. We convinced ourselves we were helping Jake, my mother Linda admitted during one of our weekly family counseling sessions. But we were actually teaching him that lies were acceptable and your honesty was less important than his comfort. My father Gary was more direct. We chose to support failure over success because failure felt more comfortable to us. Your achievements made us feel inadequate as parents, so we decided to validate someone whose achievements didn't threaten us. The family counseling sessions had been my idea. Rather than cutting off contact completely, I had proposed that we work together to understand how our family had become so dysfunctional and figure out how to build healthier relationships going forward. Dr. Martinez, our family therapist, helped us identify the patterns that had made Jake's manipulation possible. We had created a family culture where struggle was rewarded more than success, where lies that made people feel good were preferred over truths that challenged people, and where the person who needed the most help automatically deserved the most support regardless of their choices. Families often enable destructive behavior when they confuse unconditional love with unconditional support, Dr. Martinez explained. Love doesn't require supporting someone's lies or bad choices. Real love sometimes means refusing to enable destructive behavior. Today was my second housewarming party, exactly 1 year after the first one that nobody attended. But this time the guests were people who had earned the right to celebrate with me through their genuine friendship and support. My colleague Sarah brought homemade bread and stories about our latest project at work. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson contributed flowers from her garden and updates on the community beautification project we had been working on together. My book club friends arrived with wine and passionate opinions about our latest selection. Some family members were there too, but only those who had done the hard work of rebuilding our relationships. Cousin Emma had been the first to truly understand what had happened and had worked consistently to repair our connection. Aunt Brenda had attended every family counseling session and had become one of my strongest supporters. Even Uncle Robert was there, having spent months volunteering with me at a financial literacy program for fraud victims. My parents arrived last, carrying a gift they had made together in their woodworking class. It was a custom bookshelf with an engraved plaque reading, "For Michelle Morrison, who taught us the difference between earned success and borrowed glory." "We know it doesn't undo the damage we caused," my mother said as she hugged me. "But we wanted you to know that we finally understand what we should have been celebrating all along." As the evening progressed, I found myself reflecting on everything I had learned about family loyalty and justice. I had always believed that family loyalty meant supporting each other unconditionally, but I had learned that real loyalty sometimes requires challenging people you love when they make destructive choices. I had always believed that being the good family member meant quietly accepting mistreatment to keep the peace, but I had learned that enabling bad behavior in the name of family harmony actually damages the family more than confronting problems directly. Most importantly, I had learned that justice doesn't always mean punishment. Sometimes justice means giving people the opportunity to understand the consequences of their choices and make better decisions going forward. Jake was serving his time in federal prison, but he had also been required to attend financial responsibility courses and victim impact counseling. According to his letters, he was beginning to understand how his lies had damaged not just his victims, but his own potential for real achievement. My parents had lost their house, but they had gained something more valuable, an understanding of how to love and support their family members in healthy ways. They were rebuilding their finances through honest work and careful planning, and rebuilding their relationships through consistent effort and genuine change. Our family was smaller now, but it was healthier. The relatives who couldn't acknowledge their mistakes or change their behavior had gradually faded from our lives. The ones who remained had proven their commitment to building relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. As my guests prepared to leave, I stood in my doorway, looking out at the same view I had seen 18 months earlier, when I stood alone and heartbroken after my failed first housewarming. The landscape looked the same, but everything else had changed. I had learned that real family isn't defined by blood or history, but by who shows up for your genuine moments of joy and success. I had learned that justice sometimes takes time, but it's worth fighting for when it leads to truth and healing. Most importantly, I had learned that losing people who never truly supported you isn't actually a loss at all. My house was finally filled with the celebration it had always deserved, surrounded by people who valued authenticity over fiction, who supported real achievements over manufactured ones, and who understood that genuine love requires genuine honesty. Standing in my beautiful home that I had earned through a decade of hard work, surrounded by people who celebrated me for who I actually was, rather than who they wanted me to be, I realized that justice had been served in the most meaningful way possible. I had won by refusing to be defeated. I had found my real family by letting go of the fake one. And I had discovered that the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies, but building a life so authentic and fulfilling that their lies can't touch it. The truth had been worth fighting for, and now I was finally free to enjoy it. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family or had your achievements overshadowed by someone else's lies, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. How did you handle the situation, and what did you learn about family loyalty versus enabling bad behavior? Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that their genuine achievements matter more than someone else's fake ones. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your truth is always worth defending, even when the people who should support you choose lies instead.